But first up, next up, my reported monologue on a very big media story that has implications, I think, for the whole country. It's about the media, but it's about more than that. It's a story in some ways about two people. I'll tell you who they are in a moment. I've been talking for the last several weeks based on the rumors that this was coming true, something that did come true. Bari Weiss taking over the editor-in-chief role of CBS News. I've talked to journalists, political people in both parties. Some of them get what's going on, and they've helped inform my views today. Some of whom definitely do not, and they've informed my views as well. David Ellison, very wealthy purchaser, a new CEO of Paramount Skydance, hired Bari Weiss, who I'm friendly with, to be the editor-in-chief of CBS News. And Bari has done this on the strength of the extraordinary success she's had at the Free Press. You've seen her on Megyn's show. You've seen her own video. She's got her own podcast. But the Free Press is an extraordinary success just about 3 years in. And the hiring of Bari to take a senior editorial position at CBS News potentially solves a lot of problems that have existed at CBS, but it also speaks to some larger issues. I'll get to the larger issues in a minute, but first let's talk about CBS. CBS News is no doubt one of the storied top 10 news organizations in the history of the modern United States. Back in the glory days, Severide and Cronkite, et cetera, they were a powerhouse and they dominated the national news landscape along with just a handful of other organizations. But during the course of my career, CBS News has been somewhere between irrelevant and a joke, primarily because of several factors that afflict lots of news organizations. But whereas ABC and NBC have thrived during the last, say, 40 years, CBS has not. They've been way too liberal, and they've not been part of the conversation. I remember in 2000, when I was on the ground in Florida covering the Bush-Gore recount, ABC, NBC, CNN had huge presence on the ground, and CBS was virtually invisible. They've been uncreative in their programming. Their morning show and their evening news shows have been low rated. They have not been good on digital. For the most part, they have been a news organization in serious decline. The two entities that are described as the crown jewels of CBS News, where people say, well, the rest of CBS might have declined in terms of relevance and ratings and credibility. 60 Minutes and Sunday Morning. I take exception there. First of all, Sunday Morning is a really well-produced show, but they're not holding powerful interests accountable to the public interest. They're just telling stories about babbling brooks and authors who are friends with the host. So it's a good show, but it's not a journalistic powerhouse. And then 60 Minutes has done more to discredit the media as liberal than any other entity in the country because of their reach. And while, again, it's a well-produced show, it's got good ratings, it is not a program that has brought credit to the reputation of CBS News as a fair place when it comes to political coverage or coverage of corporations or other areas. So CBS News is in bad shape, and it was purchased by someone in Ellison who wants to have a strong news division. He wants CBS News to thrive, and he's not an idiot. He's got eyes and ears, and he can see CBS News has been a disaster. So he's buying a tarnished property, and he's trying to figure out how to fix it up, how to take what is the strength of CBS News, which is the extraordinary reach that it has, and something where if you put money behind it, you can grow it. And he's brought in Bari Weiss. Bari Weiss is an extraordinary person and an extraordinary force in journalism. She's an independent. She started the Free Press as an independent organization with investment from some very wealthy and very smart people who saw the potential of the idea. But she also understands legacy media. And I'm not going to compare myself to Bari because Bari is legend. But I understand where Bari's coming from in part because I now have gone to independent media, but I also understand legacy media. I was in legacy media longer than Bari, but Bari at the Wall Street Journal, at the New York Times, is a student of media, really understands the weaknesses of legacy media that she'll confront at CBS News when she starts this job next week. But she also understands the strengths. Legacy media still has some strengths, which I'll talk about. Now, why did Bari leave the legacy media? Why did she leave the New York Times? They treated her horribly. And not only did they treat her horribly with a woke mob criticizing her on internal Slack channels and threatening her, but then they didn't cover the story, and they still aren't covering the story correctly. They're still whitewashing the circumstances under which Bari left the Times. She left the Times because a woke mob chased her out. And rather than leave journalism, or rather than be traumatized by it to the point of inaction, she built the free press. In 3 short years, she built an organization that is a real deal. And part of the deal with CBS, not only are they getting Bari to be the editor-in-chief, they're purchasing the free press. So now the free press will have access to all sorts of things as it has a partnership with CBS. How did Bari do it? First of all, she's brave. She demonstrated that by standing up to the bullies at the New York Times and writing a scathing departure letter. But she's also was brave to say, I'm going to start my own thing. She's tough. She's not afraid to take things on, tough enough to go pitch Silicon Valley millionaires and billionaires and get the funding to start this. She's creative. She thinks anew. What the free press has done is innovative, but it also goes back to basics, right? They're text first. They write really provocative, interesting stories in text, old-fashioned, but it works, and she's done it in a creative way. And she's talent first, and that's been my philosophy throughout my career. Bari has hired great people. She's hired young people, old people, liberals, conservatives, people with a lot of traditional experience, people with no traditional experience. She has an eye for talent, and boy, does CBS News need that. And she cares about facts. Bari is an old-fashioned journalist. Finally, a business model. Think of that. If you're going into leaving legacy media, where there is no clear business model, and you're going into new media, some people make the mistake of saying, well, it's independent. Do I need a business model? Nah, you do. Bari found a business model at the free press. She gave the access away to people who couldn't afford it, but she's built up a huge network of paid subscribers who pay for her content in a way that has made it hugely profitable. Some people say it makes $20 million a year, pretty good for a startup. Now, the people on the left are howling, the guardians of the status quo at CBS and elsewhere, saying Bari is a threat to CBS. So Bari, again, who's no dummy, wrote a note to her new colleagues, and she laid out her 10 principles that Bari says are vital for a good news organization and vital to her and her sensibility. So I want to read to you Bari's very elegantly written, very brief rules. Number 1, journalism that reports on the world as it actually is. Hard to disagree with that or any of these. Journalism that is fair, fearless, and factual. Journalism that respects our audience enough to tell the truth plainly wherever it leads. Journalism that makes sense of a noisy, confusing world. Journalism that explains things clearly without pretension or jargon. Journalism that holds both American political parties to equal scrutiny. Journalism that embraces a wide spectrum of views and voices so that the audience can contend with the best arguments on all sides of the debate. Journalism that rushes towards the most interesting and important stories, regardless of their unpopularity. Journalism that uses all of the tools of the digital era. Journalism that understands that the best way to serve America is to endeavor to present the public with the facts first and foremost. Anyone who knows Bari Weiss's career and has looked at it seriously will not be surprised by those 10 rules or how sensible they are or how needed those exact rules are, not just by CBS News, but by pretty much everybody in the legacy media. So rather than say, hey, we've got a decades-long record of failure here at CBS, our new boss seems to have a direction to try to make the news division relevant and popular and successful. Rather than welcome that, how has Bari been received so far? This has been rumored for a while, so these sensibilities are not new. But in the wake of the formal announcement, here's what some people said. This is from The Independent, a quote from a CBS News staffer. CBS is not a good place right now. People are literally freaking out. People are using words like depressing and doomsday. It feels like some sort of doomsday. Okay, that's what they're saying to the people at The Independent. Doomsday. You know what doomsday is? Doomsday is what CBS News has been in the past. Bari Weiss coming in, rather than freaking out, they should be celebrating. All right, here's another reaction. This is from a guy named Walker Bragman. Not really sure who he is, some independent journalist. Everyone at CBS News should quit in protest. This is travesty. Bari Weiss is a misinformation peddling right-wing operative. She's totally unqualified for this job. Again, totally unqualified for the job. The people who've run CBS News into the ground for several decades. Everyone should quit in protest. I think Bari would probably welcome anyone who would quit over the arrival of Bari Weiss. Probably will save her the trouble of having to fire them. And the notion that Bari is a misinformation peddling right-wing operative. I don't agree with everything in the free press. If I did, it would be boring to read. right-wing operative. No, Bari's for common sense. Bari is not a right-wing operative, and you can, on any given day, go to the Free Press website and read lots of things that people on the right will not like. That is Bari. Here is the very famous Nicole Hannah-Jones of the New York Times. Here's what she says about Bari. In case it wasn't clear, the anti-DEI crusade has never been about merit. Zero news experience, never been a reporter. Elevated to editor-in-chief of CBS News, one of the most storied institutions in the nation. Well, I don't know how long the statute of limitations is on storied, but again, this comes at a time when CBS needs help. Bari, zero news experience. No, actually, Bari has lots of news experience, and the proof is in the pudding. Bari has built, in 3 years, a very successful news organization that breaks the mold, changes the terms of the debate, and changes the game. Finally, what would be a chronicle of the failure of the left to understand what time it is without the inclusion of the estimable Keith Olbermann? Here's his tweet. I'd like to congratulate CBS News on hiring as editor-in-chief the dumbest person in America, Bari Weiss. Dumbest person in America. Again, if I were inclined to be critical of Bari, and I'm not, I'm quite fond of her, dumb would not be the word I would use. And Keith Olbermann, who's made a career out of calling people the worst and the stupidest, Keith Olbermann is not as smart as Bari Weiss. I'll leave it at that. Finally, Keith Olbermann says to folks, you should sell all the station's equipment and furniture. There is no recovery from this. Murrow, Cronkite, and even Katie Couric would now deny they ever worked there. There is no recovery from this. Again, the irony of all these criticisms is so rich. No recovery from what? No recovery from the august position that CBS News finds itself in. I have friends at CBS, and I don't want to say there's no one there of value. I respect the legacy and as a commercial enterprise of 60 Minutes, Sunday morning, super well-produced show. I'm not saying all their other shows are worthless. What I'm saying is they have been liberal, they have been legacy media, and they have been losing. And the people at CBS who want to keep losing should say, horrible that we're bringing in someone new. Horrible that we're bringing in someone with a record of success. Horrible we're bringing in someone whose 10 points of how journalism should work are a model for anybody, whether legacy or new media. This reaction is hilarious to me. And it's also dangerous. It's also dangerous because David Ellison, from what I've read about him, don't know the guy, he doesn't seem like he's going to be bothered by this criticism. In fact, it probably makes him feel like he's doing something right because he doesn't want a liberal organization and he doesn't want a place that is legacy in all the negative ways it's legacy. Liberal, but also no business model, no understanding of how digital works. So I can't swear that Bari's going to succeed, but this is important for CBS News. It's a moment for CBS News. And anyone at CBS News who's grousing to the media about how horrible this is, that Bari's right wing or Bari's inexperienced, you should give it a try. Your boss, Mr. Ellison, has decided this is the direction he wants to take the news division. And based on the available evidence, this is awesome for CBS. If I worked at CBS, I would be thanking him and I'd be excited to see what Bari's going to do. But as I said, this isn't just about Bari Weiss and CBS. There's larger issues here that are massively important. And this is where my experience in legacy media and my appreciation for my business comes to bear. I love independent. I love the freedom. I love the ability to say and do what you want. I love the nimbleness of it. There's a lot to it. But there's also a lot to big places. And unfortunately, it's very hard to create a big place. I don't know that anyone will ever create from scratch a new organization that has the scale of the New York Times or CBS News. And what do I mean by scale? There's certain things that a serious news organization has to do if they want to hold powerful interests accountable to the public interest. Now, again, they should hold all powerful interests accountable to the public interest. Not just some, not based on political party. What do I mean? Freedom of Information Act requests. The government, the law says if you want to ask the government for documents that are not public, they have to give them to you, but there are exceptions to it. Privacy, national security, etc. That law is, when I started in this business, we used it all the time. It's very hard to do in the digital age because you're busy. You're constantly needing to produce content. You need to sit down and type up a letter and say, Dear Department of Treasury, I want the records of all meetings between Scott Bessent and Martians. And then you send it in, and then they say, well, we're going to take 7 years to respond to you. Or they say, we're denying your request. Then you have to call your legal department and you have to say, the Department of Treasury is withholding. Here's the letter they sent. They're not giving me the record of meetings between Scott Bessent and Martians. I want it. We should have it. I don't think they're right saying we can't have it or it's going to take 7 years. And then the lawyers have to go to court and they might have to appeal. That's expensive. You think independent organizations have that capacity? Almost none do. That's one. Foreign bureaus, right? You think Next Up has a Cairo bureau or a Nairobi bureau? We don't. Wish we did. You need scale to do things. Somebody bombs the federal building in Oklahoma City. Okay, an independent place could send 3 people. It's not enough. For a story like that, you need to send 24 people. Florida recount, same thing. These big stories that are compelling stories require a lot of people to tell them well, but to hold everybody accountable. What does this judge's ruling mean? How to explain it? What is this election official doing? Hold them accountable, ask them questions. To have that footprint, to have that capacity, to have that breadth and scale is something that most independent places can't do. It's vitally important. So my hope is, as I said, no one's going to create a new one. What is David Ellison doing? He's reinvigorating an old one. He's bringing in Bari. And again, I'm just going to assume the best because I know Bari's sensibility. He's bringing in Bari to say, let's take this husk, this old declined news organization with a storied legacy and lots of famous people who worked here with great records of accomplishment. Let's take what's good about it, our affiliates around the country, a legal department, incredible hardware, an understanding in the abstract of digital. Let's take all that and let's reinvigorate it and let's make it great by adding in true journalistic sensibility and a business model that will work that includes appealing to everybody, not just liberals who aren't bothered by Dan Rather trying to destroy George Bush with forged documents. Let's take everybody in the country and consider them a potential customer, and let's produce a new product on the shoulders of what used to be a great place. That's what David Ellison is trying to do. He also, by the way, is thinking about buying Discovery, Warner Discovery, whatever it's called, Discovery, Warner.